He looked down at her, his expression somber. Jungkook, I am sorry, he said quietly. I should have been there with you. I should have protected you. Wan looked at him, her eyes filled with tenderness and understanding. Wan, you don't need to apologize, she murmured. You came for me in time. That's all that matters. She looked up at him, her voice still a little shaky. Wan, how did you know I was there at that club? She asked, her curiosity getting the better of her. Jungkook, I came to pick you up, but your friend said you had been in the bathroom for a while. I spotted your hair clip near the washroom, which worried me. That's when I knew something was wrong and came to find you. She clung tightly to him, her body still trembling slightly from the earlier encounter. She buried her face against his chest, her voice quiet and shaky. Mine, I was so terrified, she murmured. I have never felt so helpless before, but I am happy that you saved me without a bad memory. He wrapped his arm tightly around her, pulling her close against him. He could feel her trembling, her body still shaken from the attack. Jungkook, you have saved now, he whispered, his voice firm and reassuring. I won't let anything happen to you, I promise. He crawled her in his embrace, his head gently rubbing her back in a soothing motion. His body was tense with anger at the thought of what could have happened to her, but he vowed to keep control of his emotions. Jungkook, I'll never let you out of my sight again, he said quietly, his voice filled with determination and protectiveness. As Ryan's body slowly relaxed in his arm, Jungkook took hold of her hand and brought it to his lips, gently kissing her knuckles. He could feel the tension easing out of her, her breathing becoming slower and more regular, because she drink was taking effect. He shifted his position a bit so that she was more comfortable, still holding her close against him. Jungkook, rest now, he whispered, his voice warm and soothing. I will take care of you. She mumbled something, but her words were slurred and incorrect. She nestled closer to him, her eyelids dropping as exhaustion at the remnants of the drug dragged her into sleep. With a gentle tenderness, he carried her in his arms, cradling her in a bridal carry as she slept peacefully. Arriving at their spacious bedroom in their luxurious mansion, he carefully laid her down on the soft sheets of their bed. The dim light from the bedside lamp cast a warm glow over her face, illuminating her features in a tranquil slumber. He sat on the edge of the bed, his gaze fixed on her features, the soft rise and fall of her chest, the peaceful expression on her sleeping face. He soaked it all in, a mixture of emotions swirling within him. After a few moments, he leaned down and gently placed a kiss on her forehead, his lips lingering for a moment longer than necessary. Straightening himself, he stood up and walked out of the bedroom, quietly closing the door behind him. As he descended into the basement, his face was an impenetrable mask, void of any emotion. The sound of the man's screams and pleas echoed through the underground chamber, but his expression remained stoic. He approached the man, his steps measured and calculated. As he came to stand before him, the man looked up, his eyes wide with terror and pleading for mercy. The bound and injured man, a picture of desperation and fear, grabbed hold of Jungkook's leg, his voice broken and filled with pleading. Please, I beg you, he cried out, his eyes filled with terror. Please have mercy, I'll do anything. In a flash, he grabbed the man by his hair, yanking him up roughly. The man whimpered in pain, tears streaming down his face. as he met Jungkook's cold, hard gaze. Without a word, Jungkook gave a subtle nod to the man who stood silently in the room. They moved quickly, their faces stern and emotionless. In a moment, they had hold of the trembling, weeping man, their grip vice-like around his arms and shoulder. His dark eyes locked onto the man, his expression cold and unwavering. He held a knife in his hand, the blade reflecting the dim light of the basement. Jungkook, mercy? He mentally laughed his word. What is it? You think you will get away with what you did? He said, his voice low and menacing. You thought you could touch my wife and walk away unscathed. The man's eyes widened with panic, his face pale and beads of sweat forming on his forehead. He struggled against the man holding him, but their grip was like iron, keeping him in place. Please, I didn't mean it, I swear. He stuttered, his voice trembling with fear. His face twisted with anger as he yanked the man's head back by the hair, pulling him up so they were eye to eye. Changu, what do you mean you did not mean it? He demanded, his voice filled with fury. You spiked her drink and planned to do who knows what to her. You think that was just a mistake? His hold on the man's hair was tight as he leaned in closer, with the knife in his hand. He traced the blade along the man's face, the cold metal gliding over his skin. The man shivered at the touch, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. The man screamed in pain when suddenly Jungkook jigged the knife in his one eye. As the time has passed, the man's pleas turned into desperate cries for mercy. Jungkook looked at him, his expression cold and indifferent. Jungkook, bury him. He gave a signal to nod to his men, signaling them to do as instructed. His men nodded in response and swiftly carried the trembling man out of the basement. He watched them go, his eyes dark and emotionless. He walked out of the basement, the cold odor around him still lingering. As he entered the bedroom, his eyes immediately fell on Vian. Sitting on the edge of the bed, he paused for a moment, taking in her form in the soft glow of the beside lamp. The sight of her seemingly unharmed and safe filled him with a mix of relief and concern. Silently, he walked over to the bed and sat down beside her, his gaze roaming over her face, searching for any signs of distress. She looked at him, her expression still a bit disoriented from the drug's effect. When I feel a bit dizzy, she replied, her voice quiet and tired. But I'm okay. His gaze softened. He gently placed a hand on her arm, his touch soft yet firm. Jungkook, you should lie down and rest, he said, his voice laced with worry. I will stay with you. She looked at him with her lovable eyes and held his hand and said, Wine, stop thinking and blaming yourself for what happened today. I am alright, unharmed, you saved me. As she held his hand, his gaze locked onto her. For a moment he felt a pang of guilt and self-blame within him. But seeing the reassurance in her eyes, his heart softened. He gave her hand a gentle squeeze, his voice gentle yet firm. Jungkook, I know you are alright, he said quietly, but I can't help but blame myself. I should have been there to protect you, to prevent anything from happening to you. She shook her head, her eyes filled with understanding. Man, it's not your fault, she assured him, her voice soft yet steady. You could not have known what would happen. Besides, you were there when it mattered most. You saved me, and that's all that matters. His gaze softened further as he listened to her words. He knew she was right, but the protective instinct within him couldn't shake off the guilt entirely. He took a deep breath, his grip on her hand firmer than before. Changu, I still feel responsible for letting something like this happen, he said quietly. I should have been more vigilant, more prepared. Vine reached out with her free hand and gently placed it on his cheeks. Vine, you did everything you could, she said softly, her thumb tracing soothing circles on his skin. Please don't blame yourself. I am safe because of you. I came without something happened, without a bad memory because you came. His heart felt a mix of gratitude and a renewed determination of her words. He took her hand in both of his, intertwining their fingers. Changu, I'll always be here for you, he said, his voice firm and resolute. No matter what happens, I will never let anything harm you. You're the most important person in my life, and I'll do anything in my power to keep you safe. Vine, you know, you're cute when you all protective like this. She teased, a hint of amusement in her voice. It's like you're my very own guardian angel. He chuckled at her words, his lips curving into a slight smile. Despite his usual stoic demeanor, he couldn't help but find her teasing and daring. Jungkook, guardian angel, huh? He replied, his voice laced with mock indignation. Is that how you see me, just a bodyguard for your safety? Vine. Oh, don't worry, she said, feigning innocence. You are not just a bodyguard, you are my handsome brooding hero in shining armor too. His smile widened at her playful words. He pretended to scoff, but his eyes betrayed his amusement. Jungkook, whoa, brooding hero. Now is it? I thought I was your guardian angel a moment ago. Vine, oh, you can be both, she teased. Vine, a brooding hero who doubled as a guardian angel, a dangerous combination indeed. Her breath caught in her throat as Jungkook hovered over her, his body close is so close to her. His voice was low and possessive as he spoke. Jungkook, that's right, he affirmed, his gaze never leaving hers. I am your brooding hero, your guardian angel, and your husband too. You are mine to protect and cherish, always and forever. A soft laugh escaped her lips. She reached up and gently pinched his nose, her voice filled with both affection and playfulness. Vine, my big baby, she cooed, her eyes sparkling with warmth. You are so adorable when you got all protective and possessive like that. He groaned at her pinch and attempted to sweat her hand away, but the playful smile on his face betrayed his amusement. Jungkook, I am not a baby, he protested, his voice filled with the mock hurt tone. Despite his protest, there was a gleam of affection in his eyes. I am a manly, brooding hero, remember? Her giggle filled the room, her eyes softening with affection as he looked up at him. Vine, I love you, she said, her voice filled with sincere emotion. More than you know. My brooding hero and guardian angel, you are my everything. His eyes softened with love as he leaned down and brushed his lips against her. In a gentle, affectionate peck, he pulled back slightly and locked eyes with her. His voice a soft whisper, Jungkook, I love you more than you can ever imagine. He replied, his voice filled with a mix of intensity and tenderness. You are my world, my reason for breathing. I would do anything for you, my love. When giggled softly as he pinched her nose gently, he smiled down at her, his lips filled with affection. Jungkook, now it's time to sleep, he said quietly, his voice firm yet gentle. You need your rest. She pouted, her eyes widening in faint protest. When, no, I am not sleeping, she exclaimed, her tone exaggerated and playful. Despite her protest, there was a hint of tiredness in her eyes, a sign that the events of the day were finally catching up to her. He chuckled at her reaction, his expression a mix of amusement and tenderness. He knew her protest was mostly for show, and that she was far more exhausted than she let out. Jungkook, oh, don't give me that. He teased, gently caressing her cheek. You need to sleep, love. You're exhausted, and rest is important. Vine, I am not tired, she mumbled, her eyes already half lidded. He smirked, seeing through her different act. He knew just how to get her to give in, with mischief in his eyes. He started tickling her, lightly running his finger along her side and neck. Jungkook, oh, you're not tired, huh? He teased, his voice laced with amusement. Well, we will see about it. She let out a mix of giggles and protest as he tickled her. She wrinkled and squirmed, trying to escape his touch, but his hold was firm and unwavering. Wine. No, stop, I can't breathe. She managed to gasp about between giggles, her face flushed with both laughter and exhaustion. Despite her protest, she secretly loved these moments of playfulness and closeness. He relented, smiling down at her with a mix of affection and satisfaction. He leaned in and planted gentle kisses all over her face, her forehead, her cheeks, the tip of her nose, and finally her lips. Jungkook, time to sleep, my beautiful and stubborn wife. Vine's laughter subsided, replaced by a contented sigh as she reveled in the feeling of his kisses. She closed her eyes. Vine, you win my handsome brooding hero. He chuckled softly, his chest rubbling with the sound, and gently scattered her head onto his chest. He stroked her hair, his touch gentle and protective, before planting a tender kiss on her head. Jungkook, there we go, he murmured, his voice filled with warmth and affection. Now rest. Vine nuzzled her face into his chest, her body relaxing into his embrace. She swore the feeling of being held by him, safe and loved. Her breath slowed as she drifted off to sleep. Her final words a sleepy murmur. Vine, I love you. He wrapped his arms around her even tighter, his own eyes heavy with exhaustion. Jungkook, I love you too, he whispered, his voice soft and content. And with that, both of them slept into a peaceful, well deserved slumber.